All right, everyone, welcome to today's episode of Is It Prophecy on Israel National Radio on Root Sheva. And the show is syndicated as Messiah Hour on YouTube. Go to YouTube and type in Messiah Hour. Check out all our great shows. We have a lot of older episodes up on that site. You can check out my interview with Dr. Gerald Schroeder, Rabbi Yosef Mizrahi, Rabbi Lazer Brody, much more. On the line right now, weekly contributor to the show, weekly guest from Somazal.com, Rabbi David Katz. Rabbi, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me back, Ari. Shavuot Tov, and this should be a lot of fun tonight.
Yeah, for sure. Now, one of the reasons we're doing this episode is in response to an email from Mr. David Dubin, and we get a lot of emails about the show. As I say, it's very interactive. We want people to email us, give us show topics, and Mr. Dubin wanted to know your particular opinion and opinions in general regarding the Third Temple, meaning there are two main opinions. We understand that one is the temple comes from heaven, and opinion two is the temple has to be man-made. So let's first start with your opinion. How do you think this will play out at the end of the day?
I don't have an opinion. That's the end of that. No, I do. But I think like most things that I'm kind of involved in, my opinion's not simple. And that's really what I want to get at in this discourse. This is a hard discussion in the realm of opinions. If you want, getting into the Kabbalistic background and what it is and practicality, I think may be easier, but obviously it's not. Nobody can just start there. You can't just go to the end result. But let's start first with the opinions, because my opinion is, I don't think it's going to make sense until probably the end of the whole little interview.
Okay.
So it's kind of strange, but you'll hear. There are no opinions. That's the funny thing. Everyone's arguing about opinions, but there really are no opinions. So that's what gets everybody. It's just kind of a reality. Whatever will be, will be. And it's kind of a shady answer, but that is the fact. But in terms for lack of argument, right? Let's go ahead and state the would-be opinions. But they are just that. They are would-be opinions. The Rambam says that it is a mitzvah to build a temple. That's a fact. There's a prophetic book called Ezekiel. It speaks about a heavenly third temple in something, right? Whatever that something is. We'll get to that. That's a fact. And there are sporadic midrashim that speak about the third temple coming from heaven. That is a fact. And then there's the Ramchal, who is, I think, Chaim, like Clarissa told me, this was only found, I think, X amount of years ago, pretty close by, a work of the Ramchal, who the Ramchal was active around the year 1700. You might know him from his famous works, Derech Hashem, and from the Path of the Just, Ways of God, Path of the Just. And he has a book called Mishkanei Elyon. How do you say it? The Heavenly Temple. And this was recently translated by a good friend, Rabbi Avraham Greenbaum. So the Ramchal, I think, gives the most light in every way, but at least for our discussion now, what he says is the temple will come down in kind of a, not literally, but a holographic image, whatever that means, prophetic or whatever form it takes. And our job is to build a building that caters to that image. Right? So somehow in the Messianic time, we will have a picture of what it looks like. Again, whether it's prophetic or Michael playing a harp, I don't know. And then we build the actual building around or according to that image.
So that would sound like a joint process or project.
Yeah, and this is, you get metaphor of the body and the soul, and you get a kind of a total view based on most opinions. And when I say opinions in this case, there's the classic commentaries to Ezekiel called the Mikros Gedolos, and there you have one opinion that the Temple Mount is going to expand many miles beyond where it is now. Some say it won't change at all. So the opinions in this case are not so much how it comes down, but to the nature of that temple, right? And so the Ramchal's position is pretty much par of, average that satisfies everybody's opinions that ever said anything about the temple. But again, that's his view. And again, there are no views. There are no real views. When people take that Rambam is speaking about an eternal mitzvah to build a temple. That does not say the third temple must be built kaka kaka kaka. And the midrashim that speak about a temple coming from heaven, some can call that literal, some would call it metaphoric, some would call it not the halacha. Right? So it's a very shady area of study to lock it down into actual opinion.
Okay, but let's try to do it anyway, because, that's what my show's about. What I want to talk about is the order, because perhaps because there's not a big movement, but there's somewhat of a movement to try to build a temple on our own. The Israeli government doesn't like that, so I'm kind of happy we're going with a different point of view. But what about that? Because what if they say, okay, it will come from heaven if we start the process, then God will finish it? How is that explained?
So the Temple Institute, their opinion is that we have to build it, and this is a double-edged sword. On one hand, I radically disagree. Right? It comes from my point of view. Rashi is the source that brings the most famous midrash. It's in the tractate of Sukkah. It's either page 41, 42, or 43. Check it out. I forget exactly what page. But it talks about the temple coming from heaven. Mishuchlal, fully built. You can see it in Rashi there. If you want, we can post up the actual page afterwards on the website. So Rashi explains the temple coming from heaven in the Midrash. And the Temple Institute, their point of view is that is a bad shita, a bad way to go. Because unfortunately in Judaism, we have adopted a lot of Christian beliefs of kind of a savior Messiah, which is not true. And the idea of the temple from heaven gives us a bohemian attitude that we can just be and exist and not have any real responsibility. And therefore we wait for Hashem to send the temple because we just deserve it because we're awesome and we don't have to do much. And thank God we're Jews and it just happens. And what a merry day that will be. And that's not Judaism. So that's a big troublesome spot to which the Temple Institute says we can't have this. We have to make hishtadlus, which is effort. We have to do something. We got to start something. You can't just wait for gifts that fall from heaven. We have to do it. So on one hand, I like that because it combats the lazy attitude, but at the same time, it's flat out wrong, right? Because there's no such thing as building the third temple start to finish according to Ezekiel's model. But then they'll say that it's okay if we build Herod's temple, and when we merit the temple from heaven, whatever that means, of Ezekiel, we'll bring down this temple and erect or cater to that temple. Herod's temple is wrong. There's no way it is Beseder to go back to Second Temple consciousness. We can only accept Third Temple consciousness, progression, redemption. Right? There's no such thing as a little intermediary step. At that rate, we might as well pray next to the mosque and have a little fancy feel-good story, sing Kumbaya, have a bonfire, and ring whatever you want to do up there. That's how dumb it really gets to, I think.
Okay, now I know this might kind of throw a bit of a curveball. I know I'm a sports guy, but what I want to know is if you could explain the difference between the first temple and the second temple. They were only 70 years apart as far as the end of the first, beginning of the second. So there were people that saw both in their lifetime, and they said the second did not compare to the first. Can you tell us why that would be?
Is that an off-speed pitch?
Yeah, it was a bit of an off-speed pitch. I figure you can hit it.
I'm gonna bunt. Right?
Fair enough.
No, so there's a lot to be said about that, but this is a nice answer. The first temple. This is my favorite teaching from the first temple. The first temple was the absolute greatness of King Solomon. We all know King Solomon's wisdom. And so what the Zohar says about King Solomon was the inspiration that he got to build the first temple was the excellence of the intellect of man. Now, if you could get mankind in his most pristine state of wisdom, that would be the first temple. Like, if you were right now to all of a sudden get pristine intellect, you would go out and understand you have to and know how to build the first temple. So that's what that was. And that had obviously the Shekhinah, right, the divine presence and the Holy of Holies. World peace was a possibility. Solomon's greatness spread from Zion. All the things we hear great in the Psalms and in the Tanakh and about Solomon and about the king and about what Messiah would be, right? That's all the first temple and her glory. The Kohanim serving Gerim in the land of Israel. It was all there, but it just wasn't that extra oomph needed. It was an off-speed pitch, not a good fastball down the middle. And the second temple was not that. It was the leftover from exile. It was put up in this, kind of a dodgy way. Didn't have the Shekhinah. Didn't have anything. That was your kind of, wait till the third temple, which begs the conspiracy question for conspiracists out there. Why didn't they build Ezekiel's temple? Right. That's the real question. And then they brought it down in the end, and Herod, who was not even Jewish, put up his temple. It was glory. It was a glorious-looking building, just a building. It was destined to come down. It came down, and here we are waiting for the third temple and discussing this very discussion.
All right, and this is a prophecy on Israel National Radio, Arut Sheva, and the show is syndicated as Messiah Hour on YouTube. Go to YouTube, type in Messiah Hour with Ari Louis, and subscribe to the channel. Check out our videos and email me, messiahhour@gmail.com. Now, let's talk about Ezekiel's prophecy, because you mentioned the question, that begs the question, why not just build the temple, the second temple, according to Ezekiel's prophecy? What exactly is Ezekiel's prophecy?
Ezekiel, number one, the Kabbalah comes from Ezekiel in one of the earliest formats. About the Ophanim and the angels and the Merkava and the Chashmal and the Klippa. All these things were documented in Ezekiel's prophecy. That's number one. Number two, come on, basic logic is going to tell you, if we're learning the highest Kabbalah from Ezekiel's prophecy, what would make anyone think that building Ezekiel's temple would be devoid of supreme Kabbalah or Kabbalistic knowledge? Even understanding the measurements, right? It's pretty hard to imagine that Ezekiel's temple, or is his temple based on the book that is the most Kabbalistic in our literature, and then we're going to go back to elementary ABC 1, 2, 3. Doesn't make sense to me. So therefore, what I assume, what I know would be true, to the point where the Kohen Gadol that will be in the third temple, the Radak, I believe, his commentary, based on the verses in Ezekiel, says that Ezekiel himself will be a Gilgal present and accounted for in the third temple. So the third temple, to understand its dimensions, how to build it, in my humble opinion, is going to take absolute Kabbalistic mastery to understand even what the temple would begin to take shape as.
Okay, but how about this portion of it? Because when we did have the temple, both the first and the second, we did animal sacrifices. And part of the reason given for that is because we did this type of did Avodah Zarah in Egypt, and we couldn't go completely off of it, so we still did it in the temple. That's one explanation. It's been 2,000 years since the second temple. Are we going back to animal sacrifices when we get the third?
100%.
Wow.
Yeah, it's one. I'm working on some things with some of my students, the Noahide / Ger, however you want to call it. And in my research about the Noahides, to this day, are able, according to the Rambam, to make an Olah sacrifice, even outside the temple, even outside of Israel. And in my research in that concept, what distinguishes a Jew from any other creation, right? What is a Jew? A Jew is the creation who is created to serve shlamim in the temple, period. We are a nation of kings and priests that depicts a temple and the avoda, the service of that temple, is offerings. That is Judaism 101.
And Rabbi David Katz, can you tell us what shlamim means to our audience?
Shlamim is a peace offering. It's one of the offerings that is explicitly given to the Jewish people. And again, we can be in one angle, okay, there's many sides of Judaism, but on one angle, our entire creation and efforts of placement inside the temple is to offer shlamim, which the nations cannot do. But you should know, it is prophesied in the times of the Messiah will lead the nations, the Gerim, from the northern kingdom into the southern kingdom, which is the temple, where everybody will prophetically told, will offer shlamim, which depicts the completion of the nations having gone through their path, and we end up as a united Israel, 4 houses, Cohen, Levi, Israel, Ger. And also, to that extent, the shlamim offering in the Kabbalistic spheres, it's said that when Israel offers the shlamim and all the offerings in the temple, that is the nourishment, the shefa. Shefa is bounty that actually goes up and nourishes the angelic kingdom. So just as much as the temple comes down into this world, if you hold by that opinion, right? So the conduit that exists for it to come down, there must be a conduit to go up. And that conduit has its integrity from the offerings. So it's kind of like a Star Trek spatial time, right? In the history, in the past, the future, for the temple to come down, there must be the offerings eternally to make that happen.
And it'll be the same system of Kohanim doing the sacrifices, and will the Levium wash their hands? The whole process, like we did before. Are we going back to that?
There is, but just as also prophesied in the book of Ezekiel, which is mind-blowing stuff, the Kohen will reveal his Levi status, and the Levi will reveal his Kohen status, something brought out in the prophecy of Ezekiel, which is brought up by the Arizal. And what it really means is the Kohen and the Levi and Israel, and Ger for that matter, have yet to finally exude their full greatness as a full Israel.
And I know there are different opinions about what holidays will last and so on. And some say Yom Kippur will not be a holiday after Messiach comes. But if it would it be then the same process? Because most of Yom Kippur davening is describing the Kohen Gadol, walk in the temple, saying Hashem's name, having the goat, Azazel, all that kind of stuff. Would that be the same thing as we did before?
I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, from what you just led me with, I can make an educated guess that when Solomon dedicated the first temple, correct me if I'm wrong, the Yom Kippur holiday they ate on, right?
Right.
And they dedicated the temple on Yom Kippur, they ate.
Right.
So I could assume, I don't know if this is absolutely true, I think only a prophet would say, but in the third temple, Yom Kippur, with the shlamim and all these things, I mean, it's conceivable. I don't know. I don't know if we're going to be eating or not. I mean, it could go, who knows? But the point is, if it changes, it's to the benefit of Israel, but there will be sacrifices in that temple. And the main reason, the altar is there. That's explicit in Ezekiel. And the altar is really, some say it's as holy as the Holy of Holies.
And the kotel itself, let's talk about that, because that's what we have right now. There are people that think, I mean, I disagree with this, that the kotel is not that big a deal, and we should not consider it as holy for whatever reason. Tell us why people would think that and what people should think. How about that?
The kotel is horrible. That's my opinion. Because it's not holy. It's not the fourth wall of the Beis HaMikdash, right? It's a wall of the foundation of the Temple Mount, right? It's where we get rocks thrown at us. It's where Obama comes to kneel his head with a paper yarmulke. I mean, it's as close as we can get, but even that's not true, right? Because anyone that follows the Temple Institute, even if I've disagreed with how the temple is coming down, right? Where the Temple Institute, in my opinion, is second to none, is they lead people up to the Temple Mount, right? That's where we should be. Right? The Kotel is not, wrong or bad, but the Temple Mount is a Temple Mount. If there was a fourth wall of the temple, now that would be something to behold. I mean, and for how many, even 2,000 years, whatever, the Kotel has been a place to pray and cry. I'm aware of that. It has its place. But the real goal is the Temple Mount, to get up there and to make a difference, not even for the state of Israel, but for just God. I wasn't that strong into the Temple Mount in the beginning of my service and doing what I do. And I had the luxury and privilege of going up with Rabbi Chaim Richmond. And I didn't know, until you go up, you don't really know what to expect, and I don't know if it matters to somebody so much. But when you get up there, you start to see just how important it is. And I mean, for me, I had a pretty massive revelation, my kind of soul awakening. I saw, there are those pictures of an amusement park that after like 30 years, it's like grass overgrown, the rides are all broken down. You see, that image?
Yeah.
Right? And so that's what I saw. I saw, Kohanim having fun, maybe with their kids, the offerings as a festive time. You could hear the festivities, but kind of in that melancholy point of view of the overgrown, festival, amusement park. The good times were there. I mean, the Shekhinah was there. How many good times were up there? I'm talking about spiritual good times. And now what is it? It's a dump yard for Hamas. And that's what I saw. And that, to me, was the biggest eye-opener of my life. And the Kotel never even came close to me for that. I can't imagine it comes close to anybody on that level between going to the Temple Mount and going to the Kotel. Now, obviously, I can't go to the Temple Mount every single day. There's only certain times you can go up. So the Kotel must suffice. But the real story is the Temple Mount.
All right, we're going to take a break. This is the end of part one of today's episode. On the other side, we're going to speak with Rabbi David Katz about the Third Temple, Rob Call's opinion, Kabbalistic ideas, and other fun stuff. So stay tuned on the other side. Again, this is It Prophecy at Israel National Radio, Arut Sheva. The show is syndicated as Messiah Hour on YouTube. Go to YouTube, type in Messiah Hour with Ari Louis. Subscribe to the channel. Check out other videos, and email me at messiahhour@gmail.com. We'll be right back with part two of my episode with Rabbi David Katz from soulmazal.com. This is It Prophecy on IsraelNationalRadio.com.